I'm Rod Duff, your host.
And I'm producer Barbie.
And together,
we bring you our podcast,
Insights and Straight Talk. And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. Woo! And coming right. Oh, dang it. Hold on, Brianna. That was really poorly done. Hey, guys, you're not supposed to be seeing this. Everybody close your eyes. All right. Your focus is on me right now. Oh, I got there before a couple of people showed up. I was really getting ready for a fun little intro there, and I messed it all up. I had not put her in the green room. I think I was scared she was going to eat some of the green peanut chocolate-covered M&Ms. But obviously, we have Brianna on the show with us, as you know anyway, because of some of the discussions we had before the shows and throughout social media and so forth. But I've been really excited about this topic for a while, for a little while we've been chatting about it back and forth, and she's been asking for information. I've been asking for information and kind of digitally got to know each other a little bit, so to speak. But this is a really important and awesome topic. And it's adding a little extra. You guys know how I like to have color in between the layers. And Brianna's approach and her journey is all about empowering people and emotions and physical relationships. And when I say that in a way that I say it, it's just a tie into another thing that brings the whole picture of what it's like to be a human species, to have the human experience. We talk a lot about holistic energy. We talk a lot about AI. We talk a lot about finance. We talk a lot about mental health, which this skims through and into, and because there's a lot of things that stress and very successful people can build in other areas of their life, and maybe not the definition mental illness is got a pretty broad reach, and it's a pretty broad topic. But on the edges of that same topic are also just kind of shutting down within relationships because you're so bound up within who you are, or other things that are going on in your life. I can't stop anymore. People are flooding in. We got 25 or so people here now. Only about 3 minutes in. I'm not going to hold back anymore. Here's my new bestest friend in the world, Brianna. Am I saying that right? Brianna or Brianna? I'm sorry.
Anna.
I said it right all the way until I introduced you. And that's one thing. I have a fascination of awesome names. Boom. And I also have a fascination with accents, probably because of what I do. My name, Rod Duff, has always been very flatlined to me. So I love, and I'm also horrible at pronouncing them. This one, I was like, oh, I got this all day long. It's a very cool name and it's easy to say. With that, tell us your story. How did you get into? So you're out of Dallas. My kids are out of Prosper, suburb of Dallas, right there next to you. Beautiful, beautiful town, Dallas, as you know. I'm just north of you. Just moved up here I didn't move up here. I moved down here from Illinois to Oklahoma, just to start spreading into. Because now I have a job that can be done anywhere, right? So I love the digital world. Let's get back into your world, and how did that start? How did the journey? What was it that brought you to the journey you're on?
Yeah, I traditional route at the beginning, right? College, those things, and I majored in psychology, but my focus was on cognitive neuroscience. So I wanted to go to graduate school for cognitive neuroscience. I really had a fascination with
Okay, so right out of the gate, I told you, if I understand it, so great topics, they're great educational. So when you're talking about psychology, obviously psychology, and then neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience, which I am assuming is a science or the practice of actual the cognitive relationship with the physical brain.
Yeah, right? You're exactly right. So a good way to think about it that everyone can probably identify with is, it's a dopamine, right? Oxytocin, vasopressin, endorphins. serotonin. So these drivers and these mechanisms that dictate and govern how we make decisions and how we interact with the world around us. So I really appreciate that particular area of science and specifically of psychology and human behavior.
So you had a dual major? Or is that what that is?
No, I had one major.
One major with it. Oh, I gotcha. So it's part of that. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, but it was a science psychology degree, which other places it's often a Bachelor of Arts. Yeah.
What a fascinating combination. Like I studied business and theater. Okay, nothing. But what you're talking about there is like a direct, I mean, that's a beautiful, and then being able to use that information, that knowledge to then use the psychology major itself to perform what you're doing. So you start out in traditional education. I kind of stopped you right at the beginning, but am I right so far? Am I caught up?
Yeah, traditional route, right? College,
Yeah.
went to a Big 12 school, pretty cliche college experience. Lots of partying and lots of fun. And honestly, the education was secondary, if not tertiary. But left school and actually joined the corporate world instead of continuing with that path. My mom was diagnosed with a very, very, very aggressive disease. And so I had to put my life completely on pause for several years. So I didn't get to proceed with the rest of my schooling as anticipated. So, and at that point, I think I was 6 years into all of those efforts around pursuing that path. So I just joined the business community at that point, hit the reset button, and then I did quite well there and was in corporate America for a long time, reached executive status by age 30-ish or so.
Wow.
Yeah, which was certainly a feat. Yeah, so I'm in recovery from that. Yeah,
I know what that is. I just got out of it myself. I hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, anyways, just thought, okay, wait, I got to get back to my roots. This corporate thing, this rat race. I felt disconnected from myself. It felt like I dreaded going to work every day. It was so unpleasant. So I thought, how could I honor where my skill set really lies and my background, et cetera? Could I go back to where I started? And so I did. And then I doubled and tripled down on it. Now it's my entire life. So I help people navigate relationships. I help couples become more connected, and I work with a lot of individuals too. But I use a mix of helping people understand why they do what they do from a biological and an anatomical standpoint, like we were talking about earlier, and then from a trauma or background, sort of life scripts, that type of standpoint. So.
No, sorry. I'm just commenting on much broad. So we do a lot of work in, as I said, mental health, women's issues, and all the things beyond. And when we were passing information back and forth, that was really interesting because of your work, and it does align very well with the people that are be discussing with you things there shortly.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting the way you're putting it, because I like to say that I'm the safety net in the show. I know I've always been an extremely curious person, and that's part of the path to my journey here, right? So in that, I've been able to learn a little bit about a lot of things, a whole lot of things, and that's kind of why this show kind of works, I think. What is that? I've heard that a couple of times. I thought that was a cat at first. Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's my computer beeping. I just turned it off. So
gotcha. Okay. I was just curious. I didn't know if I was doing something over here or not, but that's an unusual.
I'm the problem.
Yeah, no worries. But my point being is the way you're presenting, and we're just getting into it here. We're just leading into it here. But the way you're leading up to and presenting how you approach your work, your mission is much different and much more interesting. There are concerns about the whole counseling side of things, unless you really have the knowledge and depth and let's call it girth and the all that to be able to bring to a couple or an individual or whatever, because there's so much just talking going on. And I hear that on the show pretty periodically, because it's about getting, at the end of the day, it's about getting in and learning to know yourself, right?
Yeah, it's about, Yeah, I think what you're saying is if we go to therapy, and
I was dancing a little bit there. Sorry. Go ahead.
no,
Help
no,
me
you're
out.
fine.
Help me out.
Never apologize. That's what I tell my clients. Never apologize unless you have malintent, unless you're being malicious or malice, right?
Yeah.
Something like that, then not warranted. But anyways, so I think what you're saying is that if you're just talking, then what are we doing? Are we just sort of going in circles? You know, are we actually being productive, or are we just
There you go.
carving out a space to talk? I hear you. I have a little bit of pushback on that. Actually, I have a lot of.
That's why we're doing it.
Yeah, well, then I disagree with you vehemently, because there are plenty of people that I work with that even just the talking alone is a significant upgrade for them for what they would be doing at their natural baseline, which is maybe staying silent, things like that.
100%.
Yeah, people often don't understand, especially males, the power that you breathe into yourself and the weakness that you breathe into trauma or an issue that you're facing whenever you speak about a problem. So even going to someone, if I just stayed silent an entire session and someone just offloaded on me, I guarantee you the needle would move. They would walk out. They might be a little hungover for a day or so from that difficult conversation. They might be feeling crappier, but for the most part, they should have an uptick in quality of life or feeling better, more clarity. So believe it or not, and it's contrary to what I would think as well. I would think it just wasn't productive enough. But actually just talking alone, again, depending on the person, for a lot of people, it's huge. It's huge.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you pushed back that way, because I couldn't agree with you more. First of all, because I've specifically in my own, and about the male part, yeah, we're pretty bad at that. I've gotten really good at it because I had a mental breakdown. I mean, all my boxes exploded. And fortunately for me, I had a producer, Barbie, you recognize her from the name of the show, in my life at that time to help me get to the places I needed to get to be able to. I mean, I was at a point where, well, I was going to take my life, but I was at a point where I couldn't leave my place for a month, and I'm an outside salesy kind of guy. That doesn't mesh. So I get that. I absolutely get that. I'm just more impressed at the way you're. Let's talk a little bit more. I don't want to step on any landmines here. I'm just very impressed at the way you're approaching the work that you do. I did want to get into some questions, but let's finish off this here in the journey. So as you went through the traditional education, and I know what you're saying about the partying and so forth, and then you got back into the corporate life, and you're obviously very successful in your practice. How is that now going into because I see people have done some research and read some of the information we've sent out, because there's a ton about intimacy, about burnout, about all the things we're going to talk. But is there anything to bridge over into now? Let's talk about the actual actions. Did we miss anything in the lead up? Is where I'm going.
No, you were just ultimately asking about kind of my journey here. And I think it's noteworthy that I did come from a corporate environment, even though this was technically my roots, there was a gap in there. I think that's significant because it allows me to come from a perspective of understanding and empathy with high achievers, people that are ambitious, and the opposite, people that want to be like that, but are treading water. So point is, there is nothing that I have found in my education or anything, I hate to say that has been as valuable as my first-hand experience interacting with humans in a corporate environment, in a cutthroat environment for 15 years. There's nothing that has rivaled that. That is truly an experiment in human behavior, and people making decisions and choices on a day-to-day basis and kind of seeing that. So, and being in management, right, I had to master working with so many shapes and sizes, such a diverse group, and getting people motivated to do what I needed them to do. So it's been really valuable to have that background.
All right, so that's a perfect run-in with John Morris is here. John Morris, as question. Hope we got that out right. Why do high achievers struggle more with emotional intimacy? And I'd say, so high achievers, already we know men in general. I think and clear that up. Is that a true thing? Is that a factual thing? As far as men, you hinted at it earlier about talking, letting things off. And there's even guys today that still, I heard somebody on social media the other day that said, quit whining, just be a man and put up with it. That's that old thing that got us men into a lot of trouble. That's part of this. And then you add to that with John's question here, as far as intimacy, emotional intimacy. Why is that?
Yeah, I think the reason is that they are contradictory.
Great question, John, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think the reason is that they're contradictory to each other. The very things that are likely going to propel you forward in a corporate environment or in a work environment. Mm-hmm. And when I say corporate, by the way, I hope everyone understands, just an umbrella term for work. Okay, whatever you do. But in a corporate environment, those very behaviors and things that make you propel forward are often the exact opposite of what will contribute to a successful relationship, partnership, deep connections, etc. So if you have been in the corporate world, let alone a male, which really compounds things, you have probably mastered this beautiful survival skill of keeping your emotions completely stuffed down. If you had a bad experience at work, you're in a meeting, something like that, you're probably thinking to yourself, I got to play this cool. I have to read this room and come off in a way where everything is just fine. If I show vulnerability, that will be perceived as weakness in my workplace. If I spoke up about a challenge I was having, something like that, right? So if you've been doing that for 5 years, 10 years, 15, probably for most people, 15, 20 years, if they're in their mid-30s or so, right? That is not going to just be natural for you to switch off and go into relationships or your life in a different capacity, but then present in a way that's vulnerable and very authentic. So that's sort of the issue I see with the high achievers. Ambition becomes emotional armor and vulnerability feels unsafe. So high achievers also, just to kind of keep going with that, they're big thinkers, right? Your job is to think, to implement strategies, to assess
vision,
risk. Yeah, have vision, right? Put some footwork with the vision, etc. So if you try to outthink and apply that same kind of skill set to emotional problems or life as a human, it doesn't work. So when we find something doesn't work or we're, quote, not good at it, we're not really going to keep investing in that typically. The brain's going to be like, don't mess with that. So high achievers, those with a lot of ambition and things like that, are going to stay in that lane. And they've probably spent a lot of years mastering that lane. And then these emotional problems and things that I meet with people about, you cannot intellectualize them to death. You can't intellectualize your way out of the issue, which is really hard for some people to grasp. And I identify with that.
I'm doubling down on my opening statement when I talked about we do a lot of work on this stuff. And I swear to God, this is a compliment. I swear, I don't know if I'm bringing it out wrong, but I'm so impressed at the way, because we do a lot. I hear this a lot. And I was just talking to one of our team, and we're looking at, we love the subjects that we have, and the guests are amazing. And that's why we have so much audience coming in. But it seems every once in a while, there's just somebody that just kind of, I swear to God, this isn't, I'm not trying to overly blabber over you, but the way you're approaching things is extremely impressive. The way you approach things is extremely impressive. I mean, who are you? Are you like 190 years old? Because you look in your whatever-ish, and obviously not somebody who's, here. And I'm feeling like, oh my God, listen to her talk. That is structurally and emotionally. I mean, what you're saying about when you pointed out that when you're in a boardroom and somebody does something, you have to, well, I like to say compartmentalize it. That's what you're saying, right? You have to put it away. You can't show that emotion. But yet to be intimate, you have to be the opposite of what you're practicing, who you are, not practicing, but what you do each and every day in and out, whether it's a male or a female. But then you add the fact that it's a male, and like you said, it compounds it. So, oh my God, oh, by the way, before I forget, I know people are going to come back later. You know this. This isn't your first rodeo. I've seen some of your podcasts on shows that you've been on. Yeah, by the way, very, very awesome. But make sure and put in the private chat. There's a private chat there. I don't know what it's called, but you can't say it in the comments. Would you put your contact information in there? Because inevitably somebody's going to come in and say, "Hey, what was Brianna?" Oh, now I'm scared. Brianna. What was she meaning by this? So please leave that. And when I see the red dot, I'll eventually put it when it's a little bit lower down in the comments, so it doesn't get caught in the middle. I mean, we're probably a dozen questions already. Speaking of which, Rachel Hemingway. Oh, I love that last name. I'm a writer, so Hemingway is a very favorite of mine. What's the link between shame and loneliness and success? We're jumping ahead a little bit here, I have a feeling, but sorry about that. I've been seeing Hemingway for a while, and I wanted to say that. Selfish reason. But what do you think about what Rochelle's asking there?
Yeah, and before that, I just want to acknowledge your kind words. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
And that's very kind of you to say, and it means a lot to me. Because I am on a unique journey. So anytime you kind of it is very unusual. And that's not missed on me. So
let me just add to that. We started this show September of last year on Constitution Day. There was a reason for it. That's part of the show, politics, but not blue, red. It's the politicians aren't doing their job. I don't care what side they're on. So put that aside. We started a year ago in September 17th. We've done 307 shows, and a great amount because we do shows every single day. Sometimes 2 and 3 if I'm forced to. It's really hard to do that. But anyway, so when what I said wasn't just saying it because I see the trends of what people's journeys are and how they lay those journeys out to our audience, to our community here. And when I see something unique, I'm not a quiet person. You can tell I like to talk a lot. I'm not a quiet person. So I just did want to bring that out. And thank you for accepting it. I didn't expect you to come back on that, but thank you very much and keep going. Let's get to Rochelle here. She's the party.
Well, I'm going to say only one note, and then I promise I'll be quiet about your comments.
No, please, all the time if you want. I love it.
When I told my journey, right, that was, very overarching, and it was just kind of the big milestones. It really just discussed the wins. Let me be crystal clear that part of my roundedness, which is one of the, maybe if not the only, the foundation in which I'm able to do what I do, is because I have also been divorced. I have also had a parent leave me and I never saw them again. I also had a sibling leave, never saw them again. I have also had a history with drug and alcohol when I was far younger. I have also been to inpatient centers. I have also, and the list just keeps going on. So some of the reason that I'm able to even be in this position and come to, not that I need to identify with every client, it's really helpful, but it's not necessary. But I'm just saying, earlier the journey, right, was just, this was my win, and then and now I've made it, and here's the things. Sure. But beneath all of this, I have as well had my own personal journey of tons of setbacks, confusion, all sorts of things. So I do want to be clear about that. It was not a smooth path. And I think if it was, I would not be here.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. You wouldn't be who you are if it was. We like to say in this, if you have a straight line, you're not doing anything in life, right? You're not doing anything. Life goes like this, right? And then along the way, there's people like you that put little lights along that path so you can keep following it, not fall off or whatever, or be able to get back on if you do. So awesome. I'm glad you said that, because that really puts identity onto struggles as well as success. because struggles are what you don't know if you've had success unless you've had struggles and failures, right? So we'll keep going there, because I mean, this is filling in the reasons that I'm saying, that I'm hearing from you, things that I don't normally hear from expert guests like yourself. And you recognize somebody at a higher level. And that's the last time I'm going to say it. Well, it's probably not going to be the last time, but for now, it's going to be the last time I'm going to say that about you, because I'm really enjoying this, and we haven't even really got started yet. I just love the way you're talking. And by the way, I love your voice too. I just love the way you're talking about what you're talking about, meaning not the voice. I love that, but the subject, the way you're placing things in line is very important to this community, as it is to anybody. We got almost 300 people here now online. We've been doing this about a half hour now. So these folks are they're always thirsting. They're starved for real, actual, good, solid information and or places to go. And that's being presented here. That's why I'm so appreciative.
Absolutely.
That's my story. So Rochelle. I keep calling her Rachel.
Yeah. So her question, the link between shame and loneliness in success, that is a hard one, because it's complex and very layered and very nuanced per person. It could even root back to things about, their upbringing and what have you, but to keep it succinct for the conversation, I will say, when we look at success, it can be a very lonely road, right? It's often riddled with what we perceive as failures, what we perceive as setbacks. And a lot of times we suffer in silence with those things. So that trains us to not be authentic with others, right? When they ask, how are you? And you just say, fine, because what are you going to do? Tell them about, these failed ideas, or an interview on a job and you didn't get, or you got let go, or at work, you're struggling with XYZ, or you're trying to get to this next step, but you're trying to figure out the path yourself. It's just going to cause withdrawal, because you feel perhaps like you don't have the answers, whatever the case may be, or maybe that other person won't have the right thing to say. So
not only that, but as you were saying that, I'm thinking you might start to get this like blank stare on their face. I was just asking what you were doing, man. That's hard to be able to talk to people regularly about real things, the full thing, right?
It's very, very difficult. So again, just bringing it full circle to my speech at the beginning about how even just coming to someone and saying, I'm embarrassed, I feel like I'm a failure. Here's why. Here's the evidence that I've collected to convince myself of that. To just have a space with someone to tell the truth and to say all of that, that isn't stuff that, one, typically comes natural for us, but two, most of us, at least in 2025, it's hard to have people in our life that we can have those kind of conversations with. They also feel very selfish, right? We feel like we can't take up, if I'm having wine with a girlfriend, I can't take up an hour and a half of talking about myself and my journey. I've got to ping pong this, right? There's a litany of reasons why having that space devoted to you, even though it's a little bit transactional, I get it, but I think it can be really, really beneficial just to be radically, absolutely raw about some of that. But back to her question, right? So I think success, we can get very lonely in that.
Hold on. And yes, we keep pushing Rochelle back here a little bit, but you just said something. Having that space built for yourself is radically important. I didn't say that exactly right, but you know the part of what you just said I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
So are you saying you're building? I don't know if we're lingering on from the earlier conversations, or are you talking about building a space? Say that again.
I'm talking about therapy. I'm talking about going to therapy, because there's not really, for most people, generally speaking, there's not really a space that you can go and just divulge and take up all of the time. It would be seen as selfish, socially awkward, socially inappropriate if you just talk for 2 hours and somebody just head nodded right in your life. Or again, you feel uncomfortable. Like I'm putting them in a position where they don't know what to say. What if you lost a family member and you're grieving? They don't know what to say because there isn't an answer. It's not okay. It's not okay, right? You can say they're in a better place and, it'll be okay. And sure, those feel soft and good and somebody's trying as best they can. But it's just different. So I know that I'm biased, but I'm going to make the pitch for therapy having this very specific, unique dynamic to it where you can selfishly take up an hour, 2 hours, and tell a neutral third party who doesn't have your history in the way that you do. So therefore, they're not introducing things like discounting and stuff like that.
Hold on. Go ahead and talk. I'm going to act like I'm checking messages, but I'm going to go kick my dog's ass, and they're 150 pounds. They make noise. Please continue on. This is really bad. Somebody must be at the studio door. Keep going. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Anyways, so that's my pitch for therapy and why it's yes, it is quite literally just talking, but I think it goes so much further than that. Just in the fact that you can take up the space, you can be radically honest. They're a neutral third party. It's invaluable. A lot of people think their partner should be that person for them or their best friend more so, but your partner, that's not necessarily their place to be your therapist, to be also your life coach, also your lover, also your best friend, also who you talk about goals and aspirations with. We're talking about finances also. They're also a roommate, perhaps a father of your children, the mother of your children. In today's age, we tend to try to tie up absolutely everything in our romantic partner. We all see the posts that say, I married my best friend today. I married my entire world today. And those are very beautiful things. I'm not trying to put them down, but I have noticed a trend of maybe not understanding what the role of a romantic partner should be.
Great point. I came in about there was nobody around. I just moved here. We were talking about that. Our studio up in Chicago was about 3 times the size, and then we had some opening doors, and then the dogs were in the back, so they go with me everywhere. Here it's a little bit shallower the way it's laid out, and so when they bark, it's a little more obvious. So I apologize about that. And I got about half, it sounds like, of your point on that, and I just want to make sure I heard everything and fill back in for the folks here. So what you're saying right now is that in a romantic relationship, we want our whole world in that. And prior to that, where I think I didn't hear it, because my Bluetooth, I'm just whining now, so never mind. I want to make sure that you were talking about that relationship isn't about the whole world of theirs. It's about your world combined as a focus. Or did I not make up that point as well as I'm hoping I did?
Yeah, I was just talking about how I've noticed a trend in perception that your romantic partner is a lot of things, kind of all of the things. They're your life coach, they're your therapist, they're your best friend, they're your financial advocate. We make goals together. They're my roommate. They are my best platonic friend, but they're also my lover, and also this and that and this and that. And that is not necessarily the best approach. I have all the empathy in the world for it. I think it's a beautiful approach, but from a longevity standpoint, I would invite people to diversify their pool, because your romantic partner really should not be making up your entire pie. You need community outside of that. You need a therapist. It doesn't have to be a therapist, but I mean a platonic friend or some type of community where you go outside of your romantic partner. You need your own hobbies and interests, that kind of thing, right? So we don't want to tie everything up into a romantic partner, because it's way too much pressure, and there's really a particular space that they fill, and it shouldn't be all those other ones. And I meet with a lot of couples. I specialize in couples, and a lot of the relationships I see, right? You wake up 10 years from that and you found yourself quite isolated, and you all are feeling more like siblings.
From the rest of the world. Okay, gotcha. Now let me ask you this. And I've been on this. Well, did we really talk about the shame side here with Rochelle? I know we talked about the loneliness with success, and I really want to kind of get into this couple thing a little bit, because small businesses, you see a lot of husband-wife or partner-partner relationships, whatever that is, relationships. And I'm curious about your thoughts on that. But did we really get into shame here? Because I know you were talking about it. It was very nuanced, this question.
Yeah, the shame is coming from a number of things, and it's going to be on a per person basis. But generally speaking, right, if I'm a successful person, I probably hold myself to a certain type of bar, a higher bar, maybe a higher standard. So with that, shame is going to naturally come potentially easier for me, or at least just easy for me. Because if I'm on this path of success, I'll have the setbacks, I'll have the failures like we were talking about, at least perceived failures. And shame could come from that, right? I haven't gone as far as I hoped that I would in life, or we hear our dad or our mother or an ex-romantic partner still in our ear, beating us up, calling us a loser, or our own negative self-talk. So with successful people, they're typically more self-critical. They're harder on themselves, right? So
True.
for those reasons, shame, comes right alongside of that. And then I know this is kind of condescending, everyone knows it, but just as a friendly reminder, guilt is a feeling about choices and decisions that we've made. So what we've done, versus shame is about who we are as a person. I don't like who I am as a person. I feel bad about who I am as a person. I'm this. I'm not good enough. I'm whatever the things are. And that's the difference between shame and guilt, just to be clear, right? So it's very easy to see, per that definition, how shame would tie into somebody who was on a path of success, which is typically covered in barbed wire and rocks and things, right? So it would be easy for shame to introduce itself in there as you got negative feedback or got down on yourself. Another thing with shame is when you're operating from a place of inauthenticity, that also can breed shame. And a lot of times, if you're in the corporate world or on the path of success, you often have to stay in roles that aren't necessarily the right fit for you, or maybe you're just trying it on, okay, and you learn that it doesn't work after a couple of years and you need to pivot in your career or whatever, right? But staying in the wrong role kills authenticity. So what part of my life requires me to be someone or behave in a way that I'm not? And so when you look at yourself and you're going, I'm going to work, I'm doing these things, or in this relationship, and I'm really being someone that I'm not, that's going to zap authenticity because it's not authentic. And with that also can come shame. And then shame creates loneliness, right? The more shame we get, the more lonely we get,
Because you're not willing to go. You don't have the confidence now. You're hiding more or less.
Who
Right?
wants
That's
to go out on a bunch of first dates? Who wants to get dressed and do their makeup? Or I'm a guy and go get new clothes when I'm feeling crappy about myself and I'm shame and I've been feeling kind of down. No one wants to do those things. Our hobbies, our interests, our zest for life, all of that is going to take a hit when we're in a place of shame. So now we have loneliness involved in there as well. And a lot of times loneliness, right, begets more lonely. If you notice, if you're someone that stays in bed or for a couple of days, you'll find yourself doing that more and more and more. Staying in bed or staying isolated begets more desire for isolation and more comfort in isolation and loneliness. You would think the opposite. You would think, okay, I've been isolating myself a lot lately. I'm so motivated to get out and reinvest in relationships and put myself out there. And, that would make sense to me logically, but that's just not how it works.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I feel that. I mean, like you're saying, the mind likes to be comfortable, right? Likes to be happy. And that's why it doesn't like doing new things, right? That's kind of the broad brush of that devastating thought. But at the end of the day, you would think that, I think the difference is a healthy mind. If you're just resting and you're recovering and or a body or whatever, a persona, all those things, if you're just resting and recovering, then you're healthy, then you're out, you're ready to go out. But if you're not healthy and you're doing those things, and I felt this, I mean, I do not want to get out of bed. How can I make it right in my own mind to lay here, cuddled up in covers and just not thinking about my life?
Understandable. Totally understandable.
Yeah.
We withdraw. And then the more we withdraw, the more we withdraw, ironically. So
Yeah, that is ironic and makes sense. It's the opposite of what healthy is. And that's unhealthy.
yeah.
So it makes sense. So Rod here's got a good one here. It's kind of building on the same thing. And by the way, I'm really, really loving where we are right now, because I've experienced, and I'm sure basically everybody has, well, at least most people have experienced these things because, I mean, before we get into Rod, actually, I did want to get into the other. What about when you talk about partners being your whole world? And then we had that very interesting discussion, which makes sense, which still is interesting because I know in the beginning, especially when there's love and emotion, you just, as a woman, you want your man, you want to be around him all the time. And same thing the other way around. And then there's the whole biological thing that creates that, especially when we're young, because we're supposed to reproduce, right? Boom. That's why all that's happening. But then as it evolves, are you saying then, are you like, okay, I need my non-sexual friend, just a friend. And then I need, or a therapist kind of to bounce things off of, and a couple of other things to round out your life so that everybody's not your world. What about when you're married, or sorry, you're together, whatever it is, and you like I've had office management with people that I also went to bed with at home, with the kids and all that. That's not totally uncommon, but what about that? How do you see that ever as a percentage? Do you see a lot of people in that situation with it? Because especially if the business is going well, or if it isn't, that has its own issue. And then it's a matter of, okay, who's the boss? Now you're the boss here. Now you're the boss there, or whatever. Or how does that work out? And it's on an individual basis. I know. Hey, by the way, do you have any hard stop coming up? Are you okay to go a little over an hour-ish, or how long?
I can go over by about 10.
Oh, okay.
Or 15.
Okay. Well, I just like to know that so we can manage it. Sometime coming up. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We're going until 2:30, right? Central. I don't know what time zone you're in.
It's about 10 minutes right now. It's about 10 minutes for an hour to be gone. Oh, well, look at the clock. 42 minutes have gone by.
So we could do 20 to 25 minutes more. That's 15 over.
I think we're good. I only ask that because we usually get a lot of questions right before the hour comes up. And sometimes these things go 2.5 hours. But
I would be fine with that. So, we can always do it again or something on a.
Oh, 100%. But put that information in at some point if you could. Now, what about married people? What percentage? What do you think? What are your experiences? Because you're getting some stuff that I could have used a long time ago. I probably would have had some different directions in life. But what do you say? What say you?
Yeah. So, I hate to repeat myself from earlier, but it's quite similar, right? Where there's nothing wrong with having your partner, romantic partner is also your work partner, is also. Correct. There's something really comforting about going, we are on the same team. We are united. Yes. If I hired somebody externally, I don't know if they would have my back the way that this person would, because when I win, they win, so on and so forth. So it's riddled with logic and rationale. There's nothing wrong with that. The argument I was making was that perhaps don't make your romantic partner your entire world. You need to diversify where you put, yes, your emotions, your thoughts, all of those things. You are a very complex person, and to tie all of that up into one partner is probably not going to work out for you. Conflict is inevitable. I don't teach my couples not to fight because that's always going to happen. And when they're done with me 5 years from then, you're going to have blowout fights all the time, right? The goal that we learn is when we get into conflict, how do we navigate that conflict? So not to avoid the conflict, but what do we do when we are in it? So point I'm making, right, is that partner, if everything is tied up in them and we're inevitably going to have conflict, that's going to be difficult. And when we don't have platonic community, our own hobbies, our own interests, we become isolated. And often the brain will perceive our partner as a roommate, as a sibling, things like that. And we start to find that our spark, our spiciness, our chemistry, all of that kind of stuff has tampered quite a bit. My advice to someone in that scenario would be to start to diversify their plate and their interests. And to not pull away from your partner, I didn't say anything about that, or to stop communicating in a way. It's simply do not have your world tied up in them, because that can get into some tricky waters.
Where the heck were you like 30 years ago? Dang. I could have used you a little bit back then. It's been a long time. So I love the way you retabled that, because it makes sense. And maybe we didn't quite catch as much of it when you just retabled it. You know how they say sometimes you gotta touch people, especially sales, 9, 10, 11, 12. The first couple of times they may not even think about it. So in that you're saying then, especially, so that whole discussion, as you're taking control of your life, you're evaluating things, you're looking within, and if that starts to happen because you don't want to pull away from them, it's like, oh, everything's going great. Well, no, I got to destroy it because this isn't supposed to work this good. But instead of that, you're evaluating things, and if you start to become or look like you're becoming just a roommate, then you've got to take control. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
You got to manage your life.
Ideally, though, it would be before you all were going
to
roommate path.
Oh, okay. Hold on. When
Ideally,
you say before, what do you mean?
Ideally, it would be the whole time of your relationship that you remember to keep platonic connections, to have some work identity, and to have identity through hobbies and interests. You have your immediate family, there's kind of a pie of life, and there's a lot of sections in it. And we just don't want our romantic partner to be sort of the keeper of all of those keys. That's too much on one person, by the way. They're going to fall from that pedestal. They can't keep up with that forever, and don't put that kind of responsibility on them. Back to my speech about the post that we all see, I married my best friend. I married my entire world. I can't believe I have this person. If everyone died today, I'd just be happy as a clam until life ended. I'm not disagreeing with you, and that's really beautiful. But in my experience, and statistically speaking, if we fast forward 5 to 10 years, you might have a different attitude about that. So let's be preventative and make sure that we have a healthy, well-rounded sort of pie of life that isn't entirely dependent on our partner.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And what Rot's talking about here. Now I'm not sure. I've been kind of looking at this. I put it up on the screen a couple of different times because. Now, how can we? Let me go through this a couple of times with you and why I'm saying what I'm saying right now. How can we rebuild connection after emotional burnout? So in this, I'm thinking. My first thought is I've got emotional burnout with my partner, but are we now talking about emotional burnout and other things as well? How do I rebuild towards other things? Are we rebuilding that relationship? So I think there's a couple of different possible ways to answer this question. Maybe you've been burned out over what's happened over the last, and finally you're burned out on the emotion of what you went through over the last partner, your 30-year relationship. Now what do you do to rebuild, to maybe find another person? I mean, this is thinking personally here. So I'm trying to get some free advice from you here. How does that, you maybe talk about that, or also if you're just burned out with your partner, and this is what I think he's more asking, how do you rebuild that connection together again? So 2 points, one for me and one for him.
Yeah, to answer Rot, if we are assuming, Rot, that you're talking about a romantic partner with your emotional connection, because you're right, that does kind of change everything. But if you are, fair enough, right? With the emotional burnout, I would say bring in a neutral third party to help moderate, at least at the beginning.
Okay.
To help moderate, at least, both of you. And you can always meet individually and then all sit together. But to help moderate, to get some of those conversations going, and at least identify how the other person, what their perspective is, their experience, and have a calm, controlled space to divulge some of those things. Because probably left to your own devices at the house are probably creating spark, conflict, we're fighting, we're saying things we don't mean, especially when you've been with someone for so long, the exact buttons to push You know where to stab the knife, and if you really want to twist it, you know exactly what to do.
You
and
know what to do.
why your dad
100%.
left you, and this is why this, and this, all the things, right? So for those reasons, introducing a neutral third party to help moderate and bring some wisdom and some insight is really valuable. The other things I would say around rebuilding connection, something that I speak about a lot is that emotional intimacy is in 8 different forms. So it's not just sex or in the bedroom. There are 7 other forms of emotional intimacy. So if you've been in conflict with your partner or things have been on the rocks, and the idea of going into the bedroom or your life being great in there just feels like a very difficult ask, right? Because that is a symptom of we're resenting each other, we're not getting along, we're just orbiting, or maybe we're living like roommates, right? So put that one on ice. There are 7 other ways that you can start to invest and put some footwork to rebuild connection and invest in emotional intimacy that will definitely make a difference with your partner. So that would be above all, other than the third party moderator and getting some wisdom and insight in there, but to invest in the other 7 areas of emotional intimacy. And that's how you could start to rebuild your connection.
Do you want to sprinkle some of those out here? Is this the format to do that, or is that
Sure.
the book to do that? I mean,
they're
what's that?
I have them memorized.
Okay, go ahead. Let's talk.
So, for example, right, there's shared interests and shared hobbies, which don't necessarily mean that you share the interest in the hobby. You're just sharing them together. So, for example, if you guys went to Top Golf or something, right, maybe she could not care less, but you're participating in that activity together. That counts as intimacy. Another thing that counts as intimacy is, right, just like binging TV and chatting about the show, and maybe we're making fun of people together, or being like, I can't believe he did it. It was the boyfriend, whatever. That all counts as emotional intimacy. Another thing would be collaborating on any future aspirations or goals. Where do we want to be in 5 years? Where do we want to be next year? Do we want to change our budget? Do we want to change how we're doing financially? Is there a particular trip we want to take? How do we get there? Do we want to continue living in the city that we're in? Hey, I'm thinking about getting this promotion at work. What do you think about that? Things like that, right? What do we want to do as far as bigger picture kind of goals? And you can make those very macro, small, and think about the more or micro, and then think about the more macro ones as well. So talking about goals and aspirations and direction that affects you both, that's also emotional intimacy. There's also spiritual intimacy, which does not mean religion, although it can, but it's just connecting on like, why are we all here? Existential things of life, and sharing in anything from meditation to church, whatever it is that's about your spirituality and how you connect with the world around you and whatever higher powers you believe in. So that's another form of intimacy. Yeah. So there's a bunch of them, and they're very accessible. So, intimacy is not necessarily built in these big fiery milestones. Sometimes it's very small things on a day-to-day basis. And that's what it is that is really moving that needle and investing in your connection with your partner. And you'd be surprised at how deep it can go off of these very small things.
Absolutely. I know exactly what you're innuating there. That's not the right word. You're making innuendos. The way I know what you're saying there, because when you were going through some of that, it's like, God, it's just, you feel it. You could feel the lack of that, or the want of that, I guess is a better way to put it. So that those 7 other, and honestly, those 7 others, is 7 plus the 8th, meaning in the
There's
bedroom.
8.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 7 others are what make the 8th pretty freaking powerful, probably the most powerful, much more powerful. The thing between the two, that's the intimacy. That's the reward of being in love with the person you're in love with, because the 7 things are the thing, and whatever that is, love. But what I really love is you just set up the next half a dozen questions really well, because there's some amazing things coming up here. I really like that and appreciate that. That was beautiful. This one here, after emotional burnout, we talked about that, but is overfunctioning more common in women than men? Oh, hold on here. I just saw that. Oh, we're gonna hover on this one for a while. This is gonna be and she's got to drink some of that tea too. Okay, we hit one here. Thank you, Olivia. I like this. Okay? Remember, you only got 20 minutes left. 15 minutes left.
Yeah, a little less than that. Yeah, 15. 14 technically. Yeah. So, I want to say yes. Yes, I do believe that it is more common in women than men. However, I would buckle for someone to make the argument that it wasn't. It just looks very different. I do work with people on and that get into a overfunctioning, underfunctioner dynamic. What happens is as one party functions more, the underfunctioner actually underfunctions more. And so then you start to resent that underfunctioner deeply. Yeah. So they typically kind of keep getting more polarized. So for example, let's say you're a mom in your household and you feel like you're going to work and you're also doing household chores or something like that, right? And you believe that there's a disproportionate amount of investment in the house and you feel like the other party isn't carrying their weight as they should, et cetera, right? So perhaps you find yourself over functioning and the other party, quote, under functioning. So an example would be, it's very common, right? And it breeds a lot of resentment. And that resentment is not addressed, right? It just builds and then it turns into contempt. And when we have contempt, that's when we actually start to feel, not to be dramatic, but like, I can't stand my partner. Like, I don't even like them as a person. So that's when we kind of start to get to those areas. So this stuff to clock and notice is really important. I will also say, back to a real world example so we can like really conceptualize this. Let's say your son has a birthday party coming up, right? He has a birthday party and your husband's like, I'll do the cake, I'll order the cake and get the balloons. And you're like, okay, I'm going to make sure to email his class and do all the invites. And I'm going to do decorate the house and buy all the stuff on Amazon and the other 75 things. Okay, great. You don't trust your partner to get that cake right. You don't trust your partner to get the right balloons. And you don't trust that he's going to do it in advance enough. So perhaps a couple of days before, you haven't seen enough movement there. Maybe you've nagged them. Maybe you've said something and you're still concerned about it. And so you call and you handle the cake. You handle it. And that way, you know, it's going to be done well. The cake's going to be on time and little Bobby is going to have a great day. And you're also going to go ahead and call Party City and make sure the balloons are ready, et cetera, right? I hear you. I have empathy for you. You just want everyone to win. And you saw that as the path of least resistance to get there. However, what happens when you're in an overfunctioner, underfunctioner dynamic, now you have again reinforced with this person that you're going to swoop in and save that day. You don't really give them the opportunity to function. So next time when it's about the dishes or something, they start to believe and feel you swoop in anyways. And
or that you don't trust them.
Or you don't trust them. Exactly right. If I do it,
whether you actually have a reason or not, you may have a reason, but that you should be addressing them. Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, you're right. It's also a display of a lack of trust or faith in that partner. But yeah, the overfunctioner, underfunctioner dynamic applies to all sorts of things. It could be as simple as like one person sitting on the couch watching TV and the dishes are in the sink. And you're going, are they not going to notice them? Are they not going to notice them? Are they not going to get up and do them? And you're just like frustrated and what have you, because you would, et cetera. So it can show up in examples like that. But I think the biggest takeaway with understanding this dynamic is actually the more you get into it, again, the more polarized you can become and the more deep-seated into those particular roles. So ironically, again, like other things we've talked about today, you would think it would become more bridged closer because hey, I've now been nagging about this for 4 years. Don't we see a pattern here? Aren't we all going to step up and change? But actually the opposite can happen.
Yeah, usually happens. Yeah, absolutely. Paula here. How do you break this? Now, this is where we're really getting into. Remember, I told you that first one was just a nice, awesome question that I'd love. But this really rolls into a lot of the relationship stressors. And I'm really excited about hearing and discussing this. Okay, but we got to go. We got 5 or 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more. So let's man, bring the color in the layers. But you know what you're saying, And so I just want to give you that time. We're at about 315 people now, still over an hour, almost an hour. Well, at an hour. Very, very unusual. Usually it's dropping off. We're actually adding people on, which is kind of interesting. But how do you break the cycle of self-sabotage in dating? I want to know that too.
Yeah, I see that all the time. I can personally identify with it. I don't know who couldn't personally identify with it.
I can.
I think with what you
I
have,
don't date really. Sorry, go ahead.
I think what you have to understand about this is why the neuroscience piece of things I think is so critical, because back to what I was saying about you will inject weakness in a behavior just by understanding why you do what you do. So step one to answer this question of how you break this cycle of self-sabotage in dating would be to identify that you're doing it and to call it out, own it, understand it, and the mechanisms behind it. And that is going to be huge, because as you're aware, it's very difficult then for the brain, or more difficult for the brain, to keep engaging in those behaviors once you've made yourself completely aware of why you're doing them and that you're doing them, right? When it comes to the cycle of self-sabotage, that's going to be very brain rooted. So for whatever reason you feel like when things start to go well or they're good, I feel uncomfortable with that. That feels scary, unsafe. I'm waiting on the shoe to drop. They're going to leave me. They're going to wake up and realize I actually kind of suck, or I'm going to say something that's off-putting. They're going to lose their attraction to me. Any number of negative things that we tell ourselves. So what we do.
Kind of suck. I like that.
Yeah. So what we do, instead of letting that shoe drop where we're blindsided and that really sucks, instead, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the finish line and I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to make it end, because a couple of things with that. One, I chose it. It was on my timeline. I'm in control. That's far safer. I could predict it. I'm not blindsided. I'm not getting into those really scary territories. Also, the longer this goes well, or the more I invest in it, now the stakes are even higher. The pain is going to be even greater when this thing flops and then they realize I suck or whatever, or, it comes to its end or something. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to that and make sure that I control that ending on my timeline. And that feels a lot more safe. So that's some of understanding why we self-sabotage. And understanding why you're making those choices and decisions a really long way, and to kind of stopping that type of behavior and bleeding. So being aware of what your particular self-sabotage style is. And then when we're getting
knowing yourself, back to knowing yourself, being honest with yourself. Again, same thing, right? We're back, building on that same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I sorry, I was just jumping in. I didn't mean to stop your thought. You're good on where you were there, right? I mean, because self-sabotage is something that we do unknowingly. But my point that I was going to want to jump in there, and I apologize for stopping you there. But the fact that you have, damn it, I forgot my point. Let's go on with him, and I'll go back to that, because there is something I want to talk about as far as the self-sabotaging. Oh, I know what it is. When you recognize it, when you start to recognize it, it basically, you can't do it anymore. Well, you can, but it's much harder to do it than it is not to do it.
That's exactly my point. That is exactly my point about.
There you go.
The first step would be awareness, because that alone will help you with stopping it, right?
Exactly.
If we were eating donuts every day and eventually we had some grave consequence, we go to the doctor, they said, we took all of your labs and your tests, and these donuts are causing X, Y, and Z problem. If you didn't have that information, nothing would have maybe actually been different month over month. But you even having that information, that awareness, that knowledge is going to cause you to take great pause or feel an incredible amount of shame, way more guilt, all these things when you went to eat the box of donuts. So same concept, right? So we want to be aware of what our particular patterns are. If I get this, like for example, a really common one is inciting conflict, finding issues that aren't there, making them bigger. Again, I could control that conflict and the timeline and the combustion of this relationship. Another thing is we hit the eject button prematurely, right? So if I even smell that they're not interested or they're pulling away or something, I'm like, it's really nice knowing you. However, I'm out XYZ, right? We eject, because it was starting to feel a little bit scary, giving us some anxiety. We were feeling insecure about it and we're out, right? That's a classic kind of common self-sabotage.
Wow. Awesome point. How can someone spot the first signs of emotional shutdown in a relationship? Going back to what we were talking about a little bit, we slid on it, but how do you, we slid up against it. So just quickly, how do we spot the first signs that that's happening? We talked about it. What are the first signs?
I think a first sign is
Ryan, by the way. Thanks, Ryan, for the question. Sorry, go ahead.
I think a first sign is when you find yourself changing your behavior with, again, I'm assuming a romantic partnership based on this question. Yeah. So maybe we used to call them when things went well, went good, with good news, and we called them with bad news, and we called them with, whatever else, right? Whatever your personal baseline is. And then you recognize that you no longer call that person when it's good news, or you don't call that person when it's bad news or something, whatever your baseline is. And now we've changed. I would invite you to identify that you've changed. And I would want to know why, what makes you feel like that's no longer something you want to do. And then along with the authenticity conversation, right? If you're starting to behave in a way that isn't authentic, you're having a conversation and to say the right thing or this particular thing versus how you're really experiencing something or how you really feel. So operating in a way that's inauthentic. And then, of course, you start to shut down. You start to withdraw. Perhaps you keep to yourself more. And all of those things are kind of your telltale classic signs. A lot of it looks like withdraw, but not always. For a lot of people, it actually can look like what we call pursuit. That's like the technical term we use for it, where maybe you're getting bigger, you're getting louder, you're texting back more angrily. And that is all an attempt to regain this connection, regain this intimacy, desperate attempt to be understood and to be seen. So some people actually get bigger and angrier, right? Because I believe that if I go about this a certain kind of way, I'm not going to get responses back that I need, or the volume or the gravity, right? So I have to get bigger. And then some people get smaller and withdraw. And when we've got a relationship where one person gets bigger and pursues, and one person shuts down and withdraws in conflict, you're just going in completely different directions. Wow. And it can be really sticky.
God, I really hope that there's this person, it's one person that is on the show today listening, because and let me ask, just fill it, getting really close on time. Just to add to that, what about the situation? Well, there are situations, I'm assuming, it feels like what you described, where you may go in for that pursuit. You start out big and loud, I guess you'd start out big and louder, or maybe in desperation at the end, you go bigger and louder to try and gain that. And obviously, if it doesn't work, that's probably not going to work if it's not working already. Or you withdraw towards the end and just kind of disappear, because that sounds so real. Personally, I'll just make that a statement, and you can add on to it if you want. But I do want to get to these guys' questions, if you don't mind. So
I have got to hop those soon, like any second.
High achievers hide loneliness so well. We kind of already went over that. Thank you, Lynn, so much for your Gerard. What's the first small step to rebuild emotional intimacy? We did talk about that there, and I'll kind of come back to some of these folks and just kind of talk about what we did. There's two more on here, though. Friends of the show, I want to make sure we get them. John, you already know, we talked about earlier, or he asked a question earlier. How can couples rebuild trust after years of emotional distance? I do want to get to that, but I want a couple of quick. Ronalda is a very good friend of the show. She's very much involved in the show and so forth as well. How do you encourage your partner to reach out for help with intimacy? And this is interesting. How do you encourage an ex to move on when you're ready to move on. So out of that 3, can you make a 1.5 minute answer?
Yeah, on the X one, I would say you don't. It's even if you care about them, I see the big heart behind that question. Beautiful, gorgeous, big heart and empathy and care for the X. I think that's beautiful. But I guess because we're keeping things short, I would say we don't. It's not our position to encourage them to move on, right? And it may feel very cruel to block their phone number or set up, physical barriers in place. But yeah, again, really the answer is you don't. It's really not your position in your role. And you're not a cold ice queen for moving on your end while that person stays tethered. So you don't. But again, I see the beauty behind that question.
Yeah. What about as far as encouraging your partner to reach out for help with intimacy? And or is that it? I don't know. I'm not going to give Ronaldo advice. She'll laugh at me. But John might listen to me. So out of those 2, any last comments?
On encouraging the partner, I totally get that one. I'll meet with a lot of individuals who will say, I would love if my partner came in, but I know I'll never get them in here. I hear that a lot. So I totally get this question. It's too hard to answer shortly, but essentially your delivery around kind of how you package this encouragement, right? So for example, let's say you're in a partnership, right? And a lot of times, what are we going to go to? You need help. I'm sick of XYZ. You need help. You need to go improve this. You need to work on this, right?
Ouch.
Always going to be dead in the water, falls flat. Now we're going to get pride and ego in there. So you think that person's going to turn around a few months later and be like, you know what? You're right. Probably not. Now we've made it even worse as far as them digging their heels in and being like, screw you. I'm not doing any of that. So instead we package and we deliver something perhaps as, this relationship means so much to me. I can feel us getting further and further apart. And it makes me sick. And I want us to throw everything at this. I wonder if we went and met with someone, if that would help us rebuild our current connection and get back to where we used to be. It would mean so much to me. And something like that, right, is a completely different type of delivery, even though we're asking for the exact same thing, then you need to go get help. You need to go, X, Y, Z, right? So package and deliver it in a way. And that's not manipulation. That's not deception. That's just delivery. So I've got to run.
All right. Say a goodbye. Thank you very much. If you have any time, I didn't get the contact information in there. I'll look for it. I got it on your email.
It's just my website, brianabass.org.
And that's an easy website. Have a great day. Thank you very much for an awesome show. We'll chat soon. Let's keep it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much.
All right. You're out, girl. Bye for now. All right. That was awesome, guys. As you know, I'm very excited about that type of conversation. And we talked about this earlier. I'd love having my own time with you guys after a discussion like that. I'll get with you here in a minute, John. I think I can touch on it at least to have some distance. Actually, let me do that now. How can couples rebuild trust after years of emotional distance? No, I can't really touch on that. I don't have a lot of experience on that, but I can tell you this. Well, I do have past experience to be able to touch on this, although it's not perfect and would be much better by our wonderful Brianna, our wonderful guest Brianna that was here. I mean, didn't she speak well? What I was getting at is how wonderful our guests are, and then there's a couple just when they stand out. Look at the guy yesterday. I mean, my God, what a conversation. We're already looking at putting a series together. You look at what my granddaughter, can you see that? Oh, you can't probably see that. Here, let me go out to this. That's what I want to do, right? Oh, I'm already on. Damn it. I got to change the angle. But my granddaughter, our show, the name is right there. Oh, I know what to do. What am I thinking? John, you're in the way. My granddaughter right there. So I I am very excited about the information that's coming. I mean, you look at the one yesterday, and you look at the Brianna here today, and you look at others that are starting to really come into our community, and speaking at another level of teaching, of influence, of input, is fascinating to me, and it's something to be so. We're so blessed. I mean, it's so freaking wonderful that we're here in this part. So, what first small step to rebuild intimacy? Gerard here has this similar question to John. How do couples rebuild trust after years of emotional distance? So I know, as far as from a family standpoint, a little bit different. There's another level involved in it, obviously, with the number 8. But you go back to the 7 steps of intimacy, and showing that, and building on those, to be able to have that emotional connection and trust back together again, even after a distance of some great time. I mean, I look at my own. I went through a period of way too long of a time, whatever you want to define that as, but with my own family, and now have a better relationship with my family than I thought I would ever have with anybody in the world. And it just became coming back to evaluating, coming back to being into and learning and understanding, and getting help from people like Brianna and John yesterday. John yesterday. The folks that are on here are here to give us a roadmap, or additional light onto the path that we're currently on. And so it's that, John. It's you take that first step, but what you do, and what I did, but what you do first is you start building upon the person that you are. You start building upon the needs and the things of others that maybe haven't been investigated before, but are certainly a part of your awareness now, and you have no excuse other than to be that next better person. Because, like Brianna put, once you are aware of this or that, once you're aware of that weakness, it becomes much more difficult to have it, and easily probably admittable. To admit it, get it out. It's the beauty of life. It's the beauty of being the part of this human experience. Ronaldo, how did you encourage your partner to reach out for help with intimacy? I hope you're listening. Do you notice I made her kind of focus on those because we're running out of time so fast? As far as the axis, Ronaldo, if you're listening. And with that, this is what we do at Insights and Straight Talk, with you, me, your host. Hey, there's still 300 people here. And so I want to linger, but I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here, and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.